Happy day to you.
Thank you so much. Happy day to you, sir.
Yeah. Um, I was wondering what might be interesting for us to talk just a bit about, mate. Yeah.
Uh, I can't get this off my mind, Dr. Job. I was borrowed money from somebody to invest in the stock market, and I made it and then lost it, and I broke even and gave the money back. And they said if I wanted to, I could borrow it again and invest it, but I just am too nervous about it. It's like,
Oh, yeah, because like, first, of course, where anything is in a gambling sense, um, somebody could be given $700, and that gets hooked. They get hooked where that is, because they just cash it in, get the 700, and that might happen sometimes. But then it's sort of like an addiction in a bit, actual, where things are. But calculation is real, but um, odds where something is. But what is it that somebody can invest in and things just like that? Um, but it's all very speculative because it's like somebody while asleep, they're going to have made money. But how could they? Because some people even have to lost money maybe, or somebody just keeps putting money into. But it's just that somebody's keep putting money into something, so something is a value of itself as a share sort of thing. Yeah, these are all to do with you or I or anybody's calculated risk about things, and most of us don't want to care too much to keep it to a flip of a coin. But what would be a reason why, for instance, some ethnocentric groups, they really do gamble a lot versus others don't do it too much? Like, so for instance, Filipinos really do gamble a lot as an ethnocentric group. So what would be a reason why Filipinos would gamble a lot as a population?
it's a
And when
very
they go
subjective.
overseas, they do too, huh? Well, somebody's only getting $12 in the paddy field. They just feel it's better for them to put it into something with the possibility that something else could be. And so it's a bit, uh, but like here, if we just talk about degrees of gambling and degrees of speculation, um, most there's $2.5 billion that's just drawn out of everybody's life every week, and now the local people just around Las Vegas, and that's $2.5 billion that these casinos and everything just clean up on. And so again, it's sort of really where somebody just could have considered just to be at a flip of a coin relative. It's sort of really something somebody just did what that is, and there's some learning what goes on where something is like that. Something is calculated, and when the odds, like for instance here in Las Vegas and any gambling casino, the most that you could ever get is that you're going to come up against 80 times out of 200. The casino is going to be have its odds for itself. So it's an enormous amount of money that's just being drawn, and that's just drawn from everybody. And so it means that somebody's going to participate in something, but that only certain people could. Um, but these are really things like I said, where somebody gets something and then they put more in, and it's sort of that's how this happens, sort of thing. Yeah. Anyway, um, I think that um, where something could be more solid as it is, it's sort of really purposeful. But could a lot of things be like that? In fact, attention is given to things quite, and we're living in a day where it's right that somebody would be looking to see how they could make a living, um, and what can we do where we are. When we could think, oh, this is the work that I did, and I lift my hands for you, or somebody's just coming back because something was just given to them, like several $100s. Um, it's just very. something which is like football, or if men talk about football, or so many topics even, where would you start? Most of them are similar, and why would this topic be any different from lots of topics which people have, which are overeating, or all kinds of things, which is addictions that people have to their own feelings about things, and energy is around us, not square us. But we live in a world where, wow, energy square you. It's like, wow. But in 2,000 years, like 4,026, when you look back, you sort of go to museums then and you sort of see how people lived. And it's like, oh, wow, how do people live like that? It's like these little dog boxes. It's like, yes, they did. And luxury was just opulent, in fact, actual, just radical, matter of fact. But then there would be people could not even find a place to sleep. It's sort of very opposite. Something is going on that's not being taken care of, which it should. But if a lifehouse was designed and it's in the earth, how beautiful. You can't really see where people are living because it's in the earth, how nice. It's temperature stabilized. They're permanent structures. They're not, got to build them. This is going to fall down. It's only going to last for 30 years, whatever, and cost a fortune to maintain because it's an energy sink, versus this has got a heat bank around it and it's temperature stabilized, and so, it's sustainable, and it's built really with a bit of a skirt around it of the dwelling, and it stabilizes the temperature, and over the course of sort of a year or so, sort of conditions the temperature in a bank of stored energy in and around the earth. And then you could see sort of swales a little where light could come in and glass and stuff, bringing light in, and then sort of domed roofs. So all you could really see just from if you flew over, you'd see just beautiful gardens and some domed roofs and things. And so it's a beautiful garden where somebody brings the inside out, and no eyesore is in this world in a future moment. But most things we look at are sort of very brutalistic. And energy to heat water is on demand just via a solid-state Peltier device and things. And that energy is being produced just perfect, and it doesn't have to be hooked up anywhere. And the energy that it has is from the B field, so it's really enhancing your whole energy field. And so when you look at the ultraviolet and the ultrasonic and various anomalies that could exist, and how harmonious is the magnetics, and does it have any conditions that's like that? So and then angles, these are all things sort of really that could give a value to a house like of a 4, or a temple of a value of like 400, which cause you to think more with great clarity, and it's done in a manner that's very restorative. And energy was round us in the day of time, which is in the golden age, which we could move into by getting off our butts and seeing that we have a public opinion comes to be public policy, and that can assist to help government, and that people are the government. So when somebody says the government, it's like, are they speaking in a manner that they're thinking and feeling that you are the government? But energy is sort of like more spiral and rhomboid, more Mobius type of movement, more curve, more ovoid, like we're talking about. Energy's around us, it's not square you. And so ovoid plasm associates us ever more to presence, and it doesn't have a beginning or an end. And so there really isn't anything straight. And so if you chose a non-Euclidean math, you have to focus on only a math, which there really isn't anything straight in the math, so that's a principle of it. Another principle of non-Euclidean math is really you can never have more than 2 right angles. So it means you can only have one right angle, which that is nature. And then other things which is in the math and the thinking would be that nothing could be parallel per se or equal. So these are concepts which most people don't think about. They think, oh, well, something happened at the same time in space, but it's not necessarily it was simultaneous, but something was a cause and effect. But a lot of things aren't cause and effect because something happened in this relative same time. But nothing is simultaneous in this math, you see, because there isn't in nature. And so, look, everything could look a little similar, but there's some difference, and nothing is equal. And so things are more continuous and kind of not turned on or off sequentially, like nothing is sort of in a manner that's like that. So if a math that somebody has in the way of their thinking is sort of really going to be a math that can actually give you the area of a leaf and also be able to model a smoke trail or something. If the body really isn't designed to be around heavy magnetic fields, and it itself studied in nature, it has these pyramidal waves. So you only have pyramidal waves in nature. You don't have any square waves. So basically, sort of really, it's an exception to be produced where anything is where a shearing force was. I mean, that's like a 4-beat or 4 timing. And so 4 hertz and 4 cycles actually always cause brain freeze. And so wherever anybody does something which is selective restrictive, it always causes a brain freeze wave to pass through the average person's brain. But the meaning of that really is a fast where it's a direct transverse plane, meaning shearing force. It means actually that it knocks something off the base of its support and topples it. Then it does it by shearing that force at the base, and that's what shear means. It means to move vertical at the base. So it's a shearing force, as 4-beat and 4 timing does. I mean, this is the reason why the Yellow Emperor has that as the war bead itself, because it actually stops people from thinking, and they can't really think too deep either where that is. But this squid device, superquantum interference device, which is these Josephine junction, which are these spaces which measure very minute fields. That's like the gas force that you have in your body. It could always be predicted that brain freeze would be there because it would be a 4 hertz cycle that would pass through the brain twice when that happened, and it would spike through whatever anybody had in their motor program. So it's really a value where something is resonant, which is more with the number of 9. But a lot of these sites, the more powerful sites, had 4,000 negative ion to about 3,900 positive ion magnetism, and so it really would cause people to feel more clarity in things. And then they would use angles a little bit more like 51 degrees, which is really resonant model life, and that's the angle that the Earth has going from the equator coming up to the pole. And so somebody could look at sites of the past. Of course, you could see how much radio frequency, like we were talking about, or ultrasonic wave is detected. And then overall, what's the magnetic conditioning of it? Is it actually more north negatively charged? In other words, it's sort of pushing a compass away from itself. The spin where water is falling down a drain is going to give you more where the spin is in the house and places where that could be a bit different where things are. But the spin, if it's spin to the right, it's evident, of course, you've got a good dwelling where things are. But things could, like water, be passing by an electric pole and stuff. So there is a lot of stuff that's geomagnetic forces that's more, in the Earth. But it's really a bit of uncommon sense, meaning common sense, but it's sort of common sense, actually. Would you think that if an asteroid or a tsunami was coming, most people would run away?
At My first thought is yes to run, but where are you gonna run to? It's that big.
Yeah, that's right. So common sense might be that people just could quickly run, but it might not be right. Some uncommon sense could be that actually what would do to help protect yourself. For instance, like if it were uncommon sense more to protect yourself where a small fire would have been break, which would have helped where something wasn't, and somebody did that quickly, that could have helped where things are. And it's sort of acting quickly, but a lot of things could be, unless somebody's practiced it, could be aware of things. This is an uncommon sense, but just like someone would come up with an element that caused light to then be moved all across cable across the Pacific when they couldn't push it that far before. And suddenly these sort of things, something small was noticed, and in that uncommon sense, uncommon wisdom, and sort of an awareness. But having pattern recognition really, and of unity, for instance, versus frozen logos, it's simple that somebody could have this. We do. It's uncommon wisdom that somebody could be kept on the alert more, where to observe how associated somebody is in life and how present tense somebody is to us, how receptive somebody is really more, how congruent they are, meaning parallel processedness, how integrated are they, meaning actually all the parts are actually flowing and things just like this. And so verbals and non-verbal languaging and this sort of thing, sort of, could you say a lot of that is sort of a bit more uncommon sense? But a common sense has existed about it, but it's uncommon that people could be aware sort of more like perfectly detached. So with deductive reasoning, because of a realisedness that you couldn't really be doing things that was biased. And so deductive reasoning is in your own perfect detachment, that it's not any bias around where things are. Otherwise, we often would just be caught up where things are, sort of in a repeated trauma reenactment syndrome. And distractedness exists for us, but a bit of serendipity, and who's to know, I think it's better just to be empty, but it's better not to have too many predictable patterns per se, you see? Yeah. So fear, flight, fight response, where somebody that's intelligent, then every emotion is intelligent. And so it's just not that somebody said something was sort of stuck somewhere. So somebody could really observe how a body could have felt something, but it wasn't you who felt that. It was the body that did. And a polar completeness is existing versus something that's separate or dissociated. And the maturity really is more where somebody has a great proficiency more to manage anything that comes up and the things that come up in your day, and things which we were just saying is about restrictive violation, things that even selective, meaning in some moments people do it, in other moments they don't. But those are things which just don't add up, where somebody says something and it sort of has to be accepted, or it could be just antisocial, matter of fact, and where does it go, what is that? Things that said should really be more for the listening and the listener versus, oh, well, yeah, that's right, somebody's talking for another reason. But being in a non-biased type of a condition where some response more is, it's really you and I operating really fantastically more with a deferred judgment. So it's coming from the heart more, and you've chosen a heart's path where everything is, and just stop jumping into something which doesn't have a heart. And so it's a good just gut feeling that you have, really. And so it's really what we're talking about here today, sort of a bit uncommon sense, of course, that you or I or anybody would really be more in their kinesthetic feeling and have a preferred mode of sense of feeling where you are. So somebody could say, how relaxed are your shoulders, and how relaxed is your tummy and things. And or kinesthetic auditory and visual, sort of in a way that you actually process information. And sort of vestibular sense is your whole body movement and all the words that are predicating, a substantial relation between the noun and the verb. And how much is the smoothness where somebody is, where you are, or anyone with their language. I think this is sort of really an uncommon wisdom that you would imagine that somebody's only just really learning how more to articulate things, but it's really only just something about what somebody knows. And lexical stuff is just one sort of intelligence, but there's another sort of intelligence where, if that's interesting to people to learn more about, you've got all different forms of intelligence and memory. But if we don't really go past anything like it's a mistake, but if we go past it, it becomes an error. And so one should find the mistake and correct the mistake, but they shouldn't go past that mistake to go to another mistake, to go to another mistake, to go to another mistake, and they're just not correcting anything whatsoever. It's like somebody found one crime. It's like, well, how come they're wanting to go find on other crimes, and why don't they just stick with the crime they found? That's it. It's like, please, unless some reason would be, but it's just, oh, what's the next crime, and going on, and then where does it ever go? Not anybody would ever have discharged things. So it's just like, oh, well, nobody was happy that Galileo got, put into jail and he was done for where his life was. And everybody knows that was wrong, that what happened to Galileo. But what's happened since to those people who did that? I mean, isn't anybody upset that a good man was put into the circumstance that he was? It's just really wrong. And is that the sort of thing that goes on? But it's really a bit of an uncommon wisdom that some sense of silence is about these sorts of things, which is an intelligence to have remained, but yet it's really what's uncommon about it and breaking the silence for. But it's really a clearing up of the dichotomy that most minds then could form more quiet, silent itself, you see, because something comes to be more equivalent. But where a focus is more on making your blood more hygienic, for instance, isn't that actually that you've got to keep all toxin out, and that you really focus more is on what's ecological? And then if you look at blood under the microscope, well, if you haven't, why not? And if all these clinics exist and everything, and you never looked at your blood under the microscope, I was just wondering, why not? I mean, that seems a bit weird. And everybody could really join in more to have something equal given to themselves, which is they could be seeing things and looking at. And so now you're giving more consent to look at, to see, to actually improve. And detoxification is really cleaning your blood upstream. And that means, having better habit and things that's like that. But if you looked at the blood and you could see what was there, wouldn't you be able to then see what you needed to clear away? Yes. And where would you start? You'd start with the mesentery organs. That's what somebody should do, because what's that? That's the highest part of the mountain. And everything starts from the mesentery organ, which is the organs in the mid-region, which is your pancreas and the duodenum and the gallbladder and the liver. And so it requires anybody to actually fast and be able to take a bit of time off and just to be relaxed, to eat a bit and not eat all the time, because we're not great whores, you see, and we're more selective eating, and we only more or less, as our somatotype is to be monophasic. We're not triphasic or diphasic in the way that we would eat. And if somebody did stuff that's like this, what we're talking about, you're going to live a little bit of a longer life. Otherwise, got a lot of upstream cleaning for somebody to do, like, because most people sort of have these fibrocystic sort of symptoms, which is like sticky mucus. And anyway, clearing away all of that, honest. It's just, if you listen into all this work, you could hear it. It's like, get rid of what's non-ecological and focus on what's ecological. And don't do things that's not ecological. If you do jubbtalk rejuvenation, it's really designed, and it's really to do more with getting your group think right. Yeah, do upstream cleaning. And you could really gain an economy more of scale. And then this is sort of like a butterfly effect. What's that? It's just only a small thing that happens, and sort of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. You've got a cascade of a scale of economy that suddenly gets behind something, and it's very sustainable. And why shouldn't people have symptom immediate relief? And that's important. And you've got to raise albumin and this sort of thing. But and to do that, you've got to reduce inflammation. But albumin raised by reducing the osmotic pressure of the blood, by getting rid of all the toxin and debris. You detoxify from fibrin and globulin, which are the two platelets there, and you make them less. And so you've got really an osmotic pressure less. And then suddenly the kupffer cells of your body can produce albumin. And that's how that happens. And can you cause yourself to be rejuvenated if you raise albumin? Yes. And that's the way that you do it, not another way. It has to be raised, meaning lower fibrin and globulins from all the debris and stuff that you've had in your body. and raise the value of albumin because you've done that. You've got rid of the debris out of the body. You see, so something is really ethical about this sort of idea where you're going to be looking a little bit more upstream, and it's uncommon sense. It's common sense. It's you could remember to have a feeling first and then hear and then see. And when somebody could feel, I don't have a need, good, because now you could actually think about anything and you're in more an I-aware state because something is more empty. But the restoring energy, that makes for everybody, it's sort of really more the Brunner gland and everything. And it's just really, what is the agenda that somebody has? And what's the agenda that's behind anything? But having gender egalitarianism is really behind gender, and that's the agenda. And it hasn't really been ever more something that's natural, which it should be wise that it is, and it's a gender egalitarianism because sort of liberty really is where people we're equal to each other. But you and I, where we could remain where no one is separate, that's right. No one's separate. There's no cell that's separate. That's wrong. It's we. So when somebody's got rid of I finally and me and it's just suddenly the more with we, it's like, yeah, that's right. Because no one is independent. No one is by themselves. There's no such thing as someone being sovereign. Why? Well, could somebody be custom? No. You can't be custom. You can have custom, but you can't be that, you see. One can't be a behaviour much, no. You can have a behaviour, but that's not what you are. So nobody could really be living anywhere without a proper political status where you're equal before the law, which you should be, and you are. And it's only liberty then that you've got, where you've got to gain justice, because if people are not equal to each other, what are you doing? It doesn't ever work. You've got to consider these things as anybody would, because you've really got beauty coming up into a happiness of a golden age. And so if a priest doesn't ask, the river isn't going to ask a priest which way it is to the sea, of course. And it's extremely immature where anybody is that they couldn't ever have been naked, and they have a lot of shame and embarrassment, and these people just like in their nappies, in their diapers. And you look and you see a lot of things going on the world, aren't you, in the front? But you could see mass punishment, and that's stupid. This is the most immoral thing. How could somebody do that? You see? Because it's wrong. And so after that, that's so criminal itself. What goes on after this? You see, if mass punishment was, which it's been put, like, and you could see that going on around the world. It's like you could see what's going on in El Salvador, where you've got over 70,000 young boys. That's all round up, and now, of course, like if you look overseas in Ukraine, you've got 400,000 or more young boys of Ukrainian, and who's to know how many Russian, all dead, and the shortage of men. And did Johnny volunteer for that? And so, if somebody keeps an interest, like in an audience, like a film or something in a story, you've got to have a female in jeopardy, and that's going to hold your interest. But if you've got tens of thousands of men killed, it's just not going to hold your interest at all. And so, if you have a replica of a statue which is sexually mutilated male, and that's exposed in public, and that's called not sexual. And so, if the statue would have had a vagina, it's definitely called sexual. And so what's forbidden in these sorts of things is a really control freak city. Why don't you reverse that right now? Because if you don't, it's wrong. It's outright wrong. of itself. You see, if the natural it is to have codes of gender that's specific and all need ever more to rise up out of what this is, but to swap all of it anything around, go ahead and do that, because you're going to look and see if any liberties expressed, because if it doesn't fit for you when you turn it around, it's like, what is that? It's probably not right itself, actually. No, it's not. And so if we rid all the gross materialism and all the hedonism and all the perfect, and you're more in perfect detachment, I think it's sort of really beauty. And nobody is a behaviour. Nobody is an attitude. And many people say, do you have a belief? And I say, okay, so have you ever heard that? That's not probably a good question to ask me for sure, because I'm one person who says I don't have a belief. You said, really? It's like, no. So please, if you say I have a belief about something, I'm going to say no, no matter what it is. You have a belief. It's like, well, what would be the reason? I might want to say yes because something you're asking me about is something really positive. But if it's absolutely stupid, I'm possibly going to probably say that I don't have that belief. I don't have a belief. A lot of beliefs is something that just somebody's used to actually get fooled about something. But nobody said that anybody was a son of a purr or a daughter of a purr or a purr daughter or a purr son. These words are just, what does that mean? It means you've got an orifice within the gubernation. And so, you're a man or a woman. I mean, that's your tie tool. That's your tool to tie. And that brings you to have everything that you have as a right. But if I said you were a kangaroo, you'd say, no, I'm not. That's Australian. And that's why, it's, what's the definition behind what's anything said? But somebody's a man or a woman and that's your title. That's not an occupation. And it's, you're not using pronouns like a son of a purr or a man that's a hue, which is the man of colour, a coloured man, a hue man. These are states of mind. That's not a species. So if somebody says you are a drive whore, well, no, I don't think so, but you could be tricked because somebody just said you were a drive whore, or somebody made a birth certificate and they said your mother was the informed ant, and they turned her into an ant, like a deaf-handed ant, or a migrant. You see, how terrible. Why should somebody be called a cockroach? That's wrong, like an insect. Nobody wants to be a deaf-handed ant. And certainly they don't want to be a tiff of a plaint. It's just a whinging, whining condition. And somebody really has a real true name. It's really one word. It's really a noun. And we use nouns. And these are things which could cause somebody to have clear thinking more. They could have more emptiness inside more. They could come from emptiness and then they don't have any pain because they don't have any need. And so the need that someone has, I got to remember things that's pleasant. It's like, uh-oh. Somebody else says, I got to have memory of things that's painful. You go, uh-oh. And what's that? They are bank clingers. They're called bank clingers. And bank clingers are people clinging to a bank somewhere. They're not in the flow. And having perfect detachment is really you and I ever more, really being more what's definable. It's more object-subject, which is the living man or woman. And then this is like me, like I would say Jump David, because that's all lowercase. That's one word. That's a noun. And two words would be a pro, meaning no noun. And so should you be using a noun to define yourself? Yes. Not a pronoun or something which is not your identity, which is your attitude. No. Or, okay, your identity is a behavior. No, it's not. or your attitude is what you're capable of. No, you're not. That's not your attitude, you see. I mean, that's not your identity. It really can't be that something is identified except for what its correct condition is. See? So where somebody says a man that's a hue, it's like, where'd you get that word from? I've never heard it. What's a man that's a hue? And they say, well, that's you. I go, that's not me. I'd ask my sister, is that you? She'd say no. So where did you get man that's a hue from? And they said, well, I said, well, I'm not sure where that came from. It's a bit sexist. Do you know what I mean? And anyway, it's only referring to your colour of mind. That's what that means, you see. So you are not a mind. So let's just grow up where people are. Asking people to be a mind is wrong. Why can't you just say man, woman? We're man, that's our species. So if identity really is not, which it isn't, a son of a purr or a daughter of a purr, it doesn't sound right to you in English. It's just like you're a purr. What's that? A son of a purr? Daughter of a purr? It's just a new word. And then, but we shouldn't be using words which you don't even have any idea about. But why would anybody agree to be the son of a purr or a daughter of a purr? Because it could be just that you've got under a contracted con. Well, somebody could be because they have to act something out as a mindset. But they're there under oath. And that's you, the living being in your own person. It's only person. It's the living being as a man, as a woman, equal to the man or the woman that's in front of you, where things are. And that this is your oath, and oath, you see, or anyone's oath. But what's corporate as an office is sort of really inside something that's privately owned by someone else as a corporation. And you cannot be a son of a purr because that means that you're inside the corporate offices, inside someone's private owned corporation. And you might be, but that wouldn't be right for most everybody. It wouldn't be. And it couldn't be that's your identity. It could be a job that you have or something. And anyway, JC quantum is at the four corners of a document has to be corrected because it hasn't. It's like this is the new covenant. And that's a JC Quanta. You have to use a real true name. You can't be running around with a legal name fraud anymore. That's just a kill box. Wrong. And so why shouldn't people actually have more lawfulness where things are, where documentedness is? And so would it be right that somebody's just not necessarily ever connected to be living, and that it was just everybody made to be actually only a corporate self themselves, and nobody ever said anything about that? But it's pretty communistic or predatorially capitalistic. But then none of it proper free enterprise, because you have to have free exit and entrance to have free enterprise, which that's how things should be. But if somebody just said, well, use your maiden name, and they asked for that, and is that what for reason? For a commercial term that something would be about a birth which didn't exist, but it was just something which you were given, and it was a bond, but nativity was what would happen to you. And that's what it'd be called in English, not a birth, but birth is sort of a commercial term. And so where anybody like the mother, your mum, is said that she's an ant. And it says it. It says she's an ant that will inform. And she's called an informed ant. Well, what's the reason why mum, your mother, is under the title of an informed ant? And these are things that remove title where somebody is wrongfully just a forgery. And of course, and its owners, where that is, have taken over others' estate, and it's to render everyone without any substance. And clear away people and not have to pay them back. It's sort of assuming their estate and assuming the wealth of all of it. And these are the things which is going on, which is really you or I are people not having a proper political status. And it's certain that people should be equal, but what are these jobs actually offered to everybody? No. Well, that's wrong. And the corpse only is vassal, meaning it's dead, it's fiction, and it's bankrupt, and only gets its money from you or I. It's like republicing the debt. It's bringing back the debt that's owed to us back to us, we the people. That's called revenue to we the people. But to run all by bye-bye laws, it's only to run things by bye-byes. Why bye-byes? This is terrible. How come it's bye-bye? And people will say, well, it's bye-bye because these people don't have a proper system and their country has been hijacked and others are using their nation and the currency and the money and these people's money. And it's not the people, but those that are using the country, but it is the people because they're just letting it happen. And that's an enemy to who those people are that say, gee, someone isn't actually doing the right thing, but so bye-byes are there. Somebody that privately could help deal where something is, and they have bye-byes. But bye-byes are very low-order laws. And it's like, really, why shouldn't it be that everybody has got an Equal Responsibility Act? Because now you are responsible. It's not like somebody else over there is responsible. That's ridiculous. And that people pass off the buck when it's actually you or I or anybody else that actually sits above the Legislative Assembly in a proper Supreme Court, not one that's just a corporation. And it's really a new covenant that we'll be talking a bit about, I guess, today. And there's 4 different types of strange attractors in math, and each one of these things is part of something which it's once somebody wants something as a claim, it is until it's resolved of itself, and this is a strange attractor that's created equal to whatever that was because it's a charge, you see, and that charge is really what gets all cleared up. But anyway, if we could think about just something to wrap things up a bit, but I was thinking about whole brain functioning, was we were listening into everything, but you could hear pleasure neurologically gives you a whole brain patterning, and it neurologically inhibits aversion, and where aversion was it would have neurologically inhibited pleasure and interest, and it's pleasure and interest that actually our anatomy has gone out of that implicates your faculty to inspire creative influence of the future and your executive guidance capacity for things. And it's really a beautiful display of a whole brain patterning where syntax is more of pleasure and interest, and you can look and focus on things in this way. And this is the great conformity. This is just something that you don't have to conform to. This is just something that's playful, and it's just natural. I made an instrument, Jubb's instrument, which could measure the degree to which somebody was more displaying whole brain patterning or not. That took me some 19 years to put together. And that's another part of everything that people could look into. But most of us all have a bit of a bicameral mind, meaning literal connection more with the body is the mind's experience of itself. And I is something that comes to be ever more like it's like this I awareness. One could go back and look and see that back in the days of the Iliad and Odyssey, you've got Homer, and Homer is talking, and Homer can say that he got information from his heart. Someone spoke to him, or the friends, instead of I, and this means the lungs. It was a big way for someone to say I. And in the past, it was really more said for the information more was about your inspiration or took your breath away. And it's more like what did take your breath away versus how many breaths you've had. And the heart is ever more forward where advice is. And these things like what this is sort of more like a synesthesia, could be processing of emotions so you feel better at the end of this, you see. And so the friends is a word in the past, in those old stories on the thamos, or was ancient Massa tongue. And these were the boat people, and that's what they called themselves. And everybody else gave them the name like Phoenicians and all sorts of things. But this was a minor minority in all the nations that they were there in. And the direct lineage is more from Atlantis, where that sunk, and in stages in this story. But David, a long time ago, did say that there would be a covenant that would come to be. It's what this covenant is that we'll be talking about here. It's a whole brain functioning ever more, and smart contract can only come to be because of this, because you absolutely have proper appellation and things like that. And so, for me, I sort of studied for some 19 years of postgraduate education, and only finished in 1999, but it's a more literal sense of I, where anybody is in a preferred whole brain patterning. And your own cognition is more like you know who you are. And why can't you say we? How good is that? We. And where's we where you are? It's sort of really, nobody is independent. And everybody is more interrelated. And if one could define who is I and who am I, and interest and pleasure is really ever more where some figures of a whole brain pattern. You've got neurology like the septal region of the brain, which connects the mid region, which is emotion, and it connects your front and your back of your brain. So you've got whole brain pain functioning, and you've got a really beautiful state of being. And so aversion really is a pattern of learnedness, a lot and most of us would have been inhibiting and dissociated and fragmented and things. And the instrument that I developed really could cause somebody to ever more have a greater capacity to have pattern recognition and things like that. So if somebody's sort of researching, it's something that they could never look more into. And then just sort of wrapping it up a bit, I think, mate, it's sort of like eye awareness, really. It's a beautiful empty centre, which you go back and listen to these works that you have collected. It's incredible. And people should subscribe where they are so they could be notified more by you, so that they could be, let know that something has come out that you have, and we are able to have done some few things. But it's a polar completeness that exists in the world, not polarised parts. And so it's actually south positive, yeah, that's right, that keeps north negative apart where your red blood cells are, and there's a real nice colloid that's going on, and you're really a beautiful sort of floating zone there on the membrane, and a non-stick zone, and it's beautiful clean of itself, and sort of really has proper surface exchange, when you're looking at this under the microscope. And you and I, really beautiful it is, or I is the stellar space. And this is how you define yourself. And am is the body that you could see. And the body really was drawn to have a nativity, but not a birth. And obviously, enlightenment evermore is this result of you and I already feeling evermore what's preferred, then sound, and then vision. And this used to be like what everybody ever could say it was body, mind, and spirit. The body was the kinesthetic self, mind was the auditory self, the spirit was this aspect of ourselves which is involving more enlightenment. And so you've really got a capacity, or you and I or anybody, to apply more whole brain patterning, and that's like getting interest, gaining that, keeping it. And now you've got someone in the front of their cortex, and wakefulness is limited. You see, because there's only 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information in any one period of time, and then deep sleep as well, that's limiting, and dreaming is limiting, and awareness is over the top of those 3 states, and this is you and I evermore being omnipresent, meaning, why don't you look this up? What does this mean, omnipresence? When you look over yourself, yes. When you look over everyone, yes. And so something is beyond the physical attraction, and to have we and other just valued action, honest, And that's where people could gain ever more in their own personal growth. And as being more eye-aware, you could have no more belief. God help us. That's right. What would be a reason to have some limitation that you've got to have put up where anything could be overcome? It's not, doesn't have to be. And something is ever more authentic. That's you. It's your real, true, full totality. It's not like perfect. No, that's wrong. It's total. It's being more what somebody's essential identity is, Lukey. And anyway, if whatever it is that's available to anybody in the day, how beautiful it is that you're tuning into these shows. I hope actually that you could tune into more that we do. And that you and I can have a moment to connect in with each other as we do. And I'm so grateful for you to take the moment out as you do. But it's an outward lived meditation, mate. Yeah, honest to God. And this is eye awareness, and it's a beautiful inner peace. Yes, it is. And what happens when you said something and it caused other person's mind to fall quiet? How wonderful. It's really ourselves ever more aware, the inner world is ever quiet, and a sense of everything which is unity more, and to be able to shine, to laugh, to have more playfulness. And where do you hear these things? And why not? Is you valuing the people that are around you and how incredible they are? And are you able to have some interface with things rather than off-facing? And be compassionate and have more awareness to be empty and feel ever more bliss flowing in the things that you do in the day and get rid of it. Zero level learning. Zero level learning. Somebody could be learning level 1 like, oh, wow, I'll learn something. Gee, I've got to do something. I could feel better. It's like, yeah, that's right. Learning level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now you're jumping on it. If the interest is to discover, yes. And so I think these are the things which really, really, people could keep in their minds, mate. You know what I mean? It really is being more egalitarian. And it's really an uncommon sense, like we were saying, and custom might be just to have run away, like we said, from an asteroid or a tsunami, as we were pointing out. But approaching whatever it is should be certain, and something should be employed. But something might be better than what somebody did, and it would be much more that you're focused on the uncommon sense of things as well, and to protect ourselves and this sort of thing. Yes? So I think it's sort of good that people could talk a bit about what's uncommon and what's the kinesthetic, auditory and visual ways that we would ever process. But this information like I'm giving you has really come from Cloud to children, and this is the Toltec tradition. You're going to go back like quite some time, and this is a treatise. And when I heard this, I couldn't really add anything to it. I couldn't take anything away either. It just was perfect of itself. And I don't think I'd ever come across anything that was so solid like it, you see. Yeah. So that to me, I think personally, is an incredible technology, yes. And then the next show that we do might be something that we actually would talk a bit about actually all the different sort of technology that's existed in the past. That's, science. In the golden ages that we've had of the past, you see, yes? Yeah. Cities took a long time, many all terraformed around the earth, yeah? Massive. Nobody could have done that just in a day, and certainly not with tents and on horses and little shacks. Yeah, so anyway, we've got some exciting things that we could have coming up. Anyway, people could tune into these talks that we're doing and then go to jubbdavid.com as you can to pick up some more. But anyway, mate, I think I'll wrap it up because we're going to jump on things where we are. And then give me a tickle, and I will get on with the next one, mate.
You got it, mate.
Love you, mate.
Same to you, mate.
Love you, mate.